In this video, we are going to look at the stories of 10 people who died and resurrected. There have been multiple stories where people were pronounced dead and then eventually wake up right before their funeral. There are countless stories of this phenomenon happening around the world. At number 10, Mr. Ibu. On the 2nd of March 2024, the death of popular Nollywood actor Mr. Ibu was announced, and this broke the hearts of many. Although he had been battling a chronic illness, his death still came as a blow to a lot of his fans. But what many of his fans did not know was that back in 2018, he died, and a few days later, he resurrected. And this story was given by him himself.
Seeing anybody, but the other side where I was that time, I was seeing some people, but God brought me back. God came in and took charge. As I speak to you, I'm surprised I'm here.
He was the one who told his own story. And according to him, Mr. Ibu said that he was invited to Nnewi in Anambra State by a rich businessman to come perform at his party. At this time, he was in Enugu State, and after accepting the invitation, he organized his dance crew and his team members, and they all moved to Anambra State, awaiting the day of this businessman's party. Throughout this deal and this booking, he was in contact with somebody he believed was a team member of the businessman. And so when he and his crew arrived in Nnewi, he was directed to go stay at a hotel that had been booked for him. According to him, while he was at the hotel, he sent his PA to go get some drinks. Mind you, all this time he thought the people he was in contact with were people working with the businessman. So while he was at the hotel and his PA had gone to get drinks, he claimed two men walked into the room and that they were dressed in white. So he thought they were workers at the hotel, and he tried to speak with them, but they did not respond to him. They just stood there and smiled at him. And according to Mr. Ibu still, he assumed that they were fans, because it's not unusual for people to just stare at him. He's a big shot. He's a very popular Nollywood actor. But just before he would realize he was in danger, one of the men punched him in his face, causing him to lose consciousness instantly. And this was the part Mr. Ibu claimed his spirit left his body. And just as life can imitate art, he claimed he saw his body being attacked by this man. Pretty much as a spirit, he was standing by, watching this man attack him. At this point, he believed he had died because he could see his body and he could see the men beating him, but where he was standing, they could not see him. Just as we see in the movies, when spirits leave their hosts to watch as events unfold before them. After the men were done beating him up, they assumed he was dead because he wasn't responsive. And so they left. It was one of the cleaners in the hotel that was passing by and noticed his room was not locked properly, only to look inside and saw Mr. Ibu on the floor. The cleaner raised the alarm, and at this point, his PA was already coming by, and that was how many people tried to resuscitate him. But nothing happened. Now, mind you, Mr. Ibu is the one giving all these accounts. Even when he was unconscious, he was the one telling him the story, because according to him, he could see it all happen just from outside of his body. According to the story, he was taken to the hospital where he was confirmed dead, but his crew members refused to put him in the morgue. He was then taken back to Enugu to meet an herbalist, and still the herbalist could not do anything. The said native doctor equally confirmed that he was dead. And I think this is when the story that Mr. Ibu died in 2018 began to circulate. However, a few days later, he claimed he resurrected, suggesting he saw the face of a masquerade smiling at him, and the masquerade disappeared. And then he claimed two hands from nowhere held him and told him to go back. He woke up all of a sudden, gasping for air, and everyone who had thought he was dead ran away. But thanks to his family and close relatives who were there, he was then taken back to the hospital where he was given proper care. For days, it was said he couldn't talk nor walk. However, over time, he was able to go back to his normal life. 6 years later, he would suffer from a very serious illness. And sadly, on the 2nd of March 2024, he would be announced dead by his family on social media and would be buried on the 28th of June 2024. At number 9, Ifa Negero, Ethiopia. In November of 2018, an Ethiopian man named Ifa Negero was pronounced dead, and on that same day, his uncle, who was also a mortician and an undertaker, put him in a coffin to prepare him for burial. This incident happened in Central Oromia region in Ethiopia. The news of Negero's death quickly spread around people who were his neighbors, family, and friends, and people who knew that he was actually sick around this period. So knowing that he was going to be buried almost immediately, a lot of people had to come in a short notice. While they came, many of them were crying, weeping, and praying. And just when he was about to be put in the ground, people heard a knock from the coffin and heard a voice coming from inside the casket. And this caused a lot of people to panic, as some of them took to their heels, running away, thinking that something odd was about to happen. But Nigero's uncle did not run away. He quickly opened the casket and realized his nephew was alive, was then helped out of the coffin, and what was supposed to be a burial turned into a celebration. As the story went viral, Nigero became a person of interest, and people began to solicit him for interviews. And in one of his interviews, he claimed that while he was dead, for the few hours that he saw a beautiful green place and a man dressed in white, almost like the Garden of Eden, with God standing by in his shining white robe. Nigero claimed that this said man told him to go back, and that was when he opened his eyes and noticed that he was in a casket, already beginning to suffocate, and also hearing people cry from outside of the casket. He said he was too weak to yell or shout, but he managed to knock on the coffin and ask if anybody was there, praying and hoping that he had not already been put in the ground. Because honestly, that would have been a devastating situation. Unfortunately for Ifera Negero, his resurrection did not last long. 2 months later, after his initial resurrection, he was reported dead again. And this time, it was for real. And his uncle, the Undertaker, claimed that he saw him to the end of his sickness, that Negero was battling a very, very serious illness. And he believed that this time around, the illness had gotten the best of him. He was then put back into a casket and buried the next day. Although the Negero story had a lot of questions back then, as many people were wondering why he was almost buried the first time if he wasn't confirmed dead by a doctor. But according to his uncle, he was pretty much very sick. And so, when he stopped breathing, they believed and assumed he had died. Sources also claimed the second time around they made sure he was dead for real, but nothing was said whether or not an actual certified doctor pronounced him dead. It may have been the same uncle who pronounced him dead the first time that did it the second time, and also quickly rushed to bury him still. At number 8, Zuweria Ahmed. In March of 2022, a Ghanaian woman named Zuweria, who was a makeup artist living in Accra, was said to have collapsed and then suffered a brain injury that required surgery. After the surgery, it was said she was in ICU, using a ventilator. However, somewhere along the line, her aunt decided to announce on Facebook that Zuweria was dead, and her burial plans had already begun taking place, which caused a lot of people to mourn, weep, and cry. And it was normal for the burial plans to go on just as immediately as her death was announced, given that she is Muslim. But just within this space, another news began to spread that she had woken up, which caused a lot of people to believe that she had resurrected from the dead. And the internet went ballistic, calling it a miracle, saying God had given her another chance at life. However, though, the doctors who attended to her claimed that she never really died, that it must have been a miscommunication from the auntie. But a lot of people believe that she actually did die and then resurrected. Unfortunately, her second chance at life would not last long, because few days later, she was eventually announced dead by the doctors, and then she was buried shortly afterwards. At number 7, Bright Elliot Moyo. A South African man named Bright Elliot Moyo became popular in 2019 after a video showing him being raised from the dead by a controversial South African-based pastor named Ralph Lukau. This story went viral. Many people thought this pastor had performed the miracle of a lifetime, raising the dead from the grave, pretty much raising Bright Elliot Moyo from a coffin. And that was what made a lot of people believe it, because this man came out of his casket with cotton wool from his nose, already dressed in suit, almost as though he was already being prepared for burial and taken to the cemetery. But the story had us believing that his family decided to bring him to this pastor instead, who then performed the miracle of raising one from the dead. But there were people who did not believe it. There were people who called it out. There were people who said this was not real, and that it was not an actual miracle, but something that was staged, because Elliot was at the time very ill, and so it was believable for a lot of people who knew him that he had died. But it is possible that this pastor took advantage of his situation to make him play dead, so he would resurrect him from the dead for show, to make people believe he was a powerful man of God. Eventually, though, Pastor Lukau would admit that that miracle was staged and he would apologize to the public. However, for a lot of people, Bright Elliot Moyo was someone who had resurrected from the dead. Many people believed he actually did die and resurrected. It's not clear why he took part in that miracle scam. Maybe he himself too was hoping for a miracle, given that he too around that period was also dealing with an illness. After the news of his resurrection went viral, A month later, Bright Elliot Moyo would make the news again, and this time it would be announced that he had died for real. And this time, there was no resurrection. He was eventually buried in April of 2019, that same year. It was said towards the end of his life, his stomach began to swell for about 3 days, which led to his death. Although many people believe that he wasn't actually sick at the time of the resurrection, a lot of people claim he was well and fine when he took part in that fake resurrection, in that fake miracle. However, people started claiming that God or the universe began to punish him for faking his death with the sickness that eventually killed him. However, other sources believe that he was actually sick around that period of time where he faked the resurrection, and that his death 1 month later was just a continuation of the effect of the sickness he had been battling. A 17-year-old Uganda girl. In February of 2023, a 17-year-old girl whose name was not given was viciously attacked by an angry mob. In fact, this was pretty much jungle justice. It was said that this young girl had been accused of stealing, which prompted a lot of people in the community to jump her. This happened in Apak town in Uganda, and according to what was said, the 17-year-old girl had stolen some bunch of bananas and was trying to get away with it when people spotted her, accosted her, confronted her, in which this confrontation turned into a jungle justice. She was beaten, viciously attacked, and eventually slumped and died. The police were called to the scene, and an investigation began into her death. They concluded that it was mob justice, and the police began looking for people who were involved in beating this girl to death. They collected multiple statements from eyewitnesses, and her body was taken to the mortuary. The police would later arrest one person in connection to her death, and they were already planning to charge this person. They were already preparing to charge this person with the killing of this 17-year-old girl. That was when the police soon got a call from the hospital where they had deposited her body, in which the doctor told them that she was not dead. According to the story, just when they were about to perform an autopsy to see what really caused her death, it was said they realized that she still had life in her, and instantly she was rushed back to the hospital, away from the morgue, where she was put on life support. It's not clear what became of this story because I tried to follow it up to see if eventually she made it out alive from life support, but so far we only got the news that she didn't die, and there's a chance also that she probably made it out alive, because I'm sure if she had passed on, it would have still been on the news, and whoever had been arrested for her death would have been charged for her murder still. So let's just hope whoever this 17-year-old girl is still alive, and her resurrection will be permanent for a while. At number 6, Pastor Ada Nakasuja. In March of 2023, a Ugandan pastor named Ada Nakasuja told her story of how she died and went to heaven in 2006. According to her, on the 16th of November 2006, she lost her life and went to heaven. She claimed she saw God and saw Jesus and the Holy Spirit. She also claimed she saw other people who were written in the Bible, like Abraham and Enoch. In her account of her death, she said she saw 4 different heavens. It's not clear who was giving her a tour around the heavenly bodies. However, she admitted that after she saw the heavens, she went to visit hellfire. It's not clear how many hellfires she saw or who she saw there from the Bible, but eventually she resurrected, and that was when she knew she had been called by God. When asked how she died, she claimed that she did not really fall sick, that she was in a salon trying to make her hair when her head started spinning, and all of a sudden she saw her spirit leave her body, and it was around this period of time she started touring the heavens and the hells. Although this happened in 2006, it's not clear why she started telling her story in 2023. Maybe she had told it multiple times. It may have only just gone viral in 2023. She had made a lot of videos about it and had even written multiple books about her encounter after she died. Many people believe she's lying and she's just creating money grab attention. Although there are people who believe that our encounter is true, and to be really honest, we've seen a lot of stories like this. Many people who have claimed to have died and gone to heaven. It's a common religious scam, if I'm to say. Unfortunately, or should I say ironically, there are people who believed it happened. Rosa Sheposheso Samson. On the 22nd of June in 2017, a woman named Rosa Sheposheso Samson was said to have fallen sick from arthritis and died. However, her husband did not bury her immediately. It was said her husband quickly called a pastor named Prophet David Owuho of the Repentance and Holiness Church in Kenya. This prophet was informed about the death of Rosa, and this was through the phone. When Pastor David received the news, he said it is well, and then proceeded to pray for Rosa through the phone. And it was believed that after the prayer, Rosa came back to life. It was said that a lot of people in Shepparton village in Kenya ran to her house to witness the miracle. They knew of her death, and they knew she had been kept in the house for a while, hoping for a miracle, and eventually that miracle happened. She was then taken to the hospital, where it was said she took a while to get herself back, and eventually she made a full recovery and started preaching the gospel from then on. The story of Rosa's resurrection became the center point of her ministry. People knew her story. People knew that she had died and was prayed by a pastor from the phone, whereby she resurrected, which made her some sort of a credible preacher woman. Her resurrection was a testament to God's promise. However, though, 2 years later, on the 22nd of January 2019, Rosa died again at the age of 59, and this time, she was not resurrected. She was eventually buried in Shepkoti village in Kenya. At number 3, Junior Pope. On the 10th of April 2024, Nollywood actor Junior Pope was involved in a ghastly boat accident while in location filming for a movie. He, along with other crew members in the movie production, lost their lives, although some others survived. Junior Pope coming back to life after being assumed dead is something that is still of debate up to this day. According to the story, after the boat accident happened, rescuers went to find survivors. Unfortunately, Nollywood actor Junior Pope was not part of the survivors. He was dragged out of the water, presumably dead. And videos circulating of his body being pulled out of the water back to the shore showed and revealed that he was dead. But this tragedy unfolded in real time, as many people were documenting it as it was happening. And just as everyone was mourning the loss of Junior Pope and trying to wrap their heads around what had happened, news of his resurrection began to circulate.
Still alive. Live video. Still alive. Live video.
In fact, there was video evidence showing him being resuscitated, showing him being sat up by a group of people surrounding him by the waterside. And in the video, we could hear people yelling, "He's alive, he's not dead." We eventually got to see a crowd of people take him to a hospital. Later on, an eyewitness recounted that Junior Pope was first taken to a morgue, where the mortuary attendants told them that he was still alive. Then we were made to believe that rather than taking him to the hospital immediately, he was then taken to a native doctor who tried to perform some rituals for him before eventually being taken to the hospital as a last resort, where he was eventually pronounced dead. This brief moment between the accident and his body being brought to the shores and him being announced alive made a lot of people believe that he was given a second chance at life. But unfortunately, his chances were placed in the hands of people who believed the native doctor was the best way to go over an actual medical doctor. The plot of events of Junior Pope's death showed that the accident had happened. People began to post that he was dead. Eventually, it was announced that he was alive, and a lot of people who posted about his death began to delete their posts, which made it all the more plausible that he had a chance at life. However, though, there are a group of people who believe that Junior Pope was never alive, that he was always dead from the moment he was dragged out of the river, and that the story or the news or the alarm that he was still alive was false, and may have been as a result of denial or wishful thinking. Whether or not that is true, there's still a lot of people who believe that Junior Pope died and resurrected for a while, before eventually dying finally. At number 2, Winnie Lafunja. We've covered this story on our page on its own, so I'll include a link. However, since we're talking about people who died and resurrected, the story of Winnie Lafunja is very intriguing, very mysterious, and very unusual. Winnie Lafunja was a 17-year-old Zambian girl who got sick and died in November of 2016. 3 days later, on the 12th of November 2016, she was buried. After her burial, her family were left to pick up the pieces and move on with their life after losing their beloved daughter, Winnie Lafunja. Days passed, weeks passed, months passed, and 2 years passed, and the family were eventually moving on. However, in 2018, 2 years later, a total stranger would knock at their door, and they would open this door to see a young girl standing before them, claiming that she was Winnie Lafunja, their daughter. It's not clear whether or not the family did not recognize her instantly, but there's a chance that since they knew their daughter was dead, whoever they were looking at may look like their daughter, but they would not interpret it to be their daughter because this was 2 years later. And a young girl who would be the same age as their daughter if she was alive, was claiming to be their daughter Winnie, who had died in 2016. It was almost believable. She looks like Winnie, but Winnie was dead and had been buried. So if she wasn't Winnie, then who was she? The family were not totally convinced. I mean, it's believable, but they were not convinced. Something wasn't adding up. They really wanted to be sure who this girl was, and they made an official report to the police, and when the police came to do their investigation, they questioned this said stranger that just showed up at their door. And this young girl, this stranger, was able to name her parents by their first name and their last name. She was able to identify other members of her family, relatives, neighbors, friends, things that had happened, things that only the late Winnie Lofunja would know. Everything was almost seeming like this girl was Winnie Lofunja until another family came to claim her, saying that she was their daughter and her name was not Winnie Lofunja, but Iran Nwamba. This second family claimed that their daughter Iran was mentally unstable and that she was not Winnie Lofunja. However, Winnie Lofunja's parents were surprised as to how she would know about Winnie Lofunja and details that only Winnie would know. It turned out that Iran and Winnie Lofunja may have lived in the same city. And eventually it turned out that they were two different people. There were even rumors that the family had to exhume Winnie Lofunja's grave only to find a banana tree there. But it's unclear if that was the case. As earlier reported, the said girl denied the second family, claiming that she was actually Winnie Lofunja and she belonged to Winnie Lofunja's family. However, Winnie Lofunja's family were having a hard time believing that their daughter had resurrected, or pretty much she never even died in the first place, which made a lot of people suspect foul play in Winnie Lofunja's death, claiming that maybe she had been cloned and trafficked, and that she eventually found her way back home after escaping from a plantation farm. Because this was a story this girl was giving to these parents. Because when she approached Winnie Lofunja's family, she claimed that she was taken to a plantation farm where she was made to slave and work with other people there. And when she found her way to escape, she came back home, straight to Winnie Lofunja's family home. The story of Winnie Lofunja was one that shook the state, and many people were confused as to what was really going on. Was this strange girl Winnie Lofunja, or was she Iran Nwamba? Was there a switch? Was she a clone? How would she know things that only the late Winnie Lofunja would have known? Thorough investigation was eventually conducted and a DNA test was carried out, which eventually confirmed that she was not Winnie Lofunja, and rather she belonged to the second family who was claiming her and also saying that she had mental health issues. Now, our number one. This story is pretty much one of the realest resurrection story, and thankfully the person we're about to talk about is still very much alive. For a lot of people, Jesus is the only person who had died and resurrected 3 days after. Not many people know the story of Nollywood actor Jerry Amelio, who had a terrible accident in May of 1998 and was pronounced dead, kept in the mortuary for 3 days. Just when he was about to be embalmed, it was said he resurrected. Jerry Amelio's story is one that could easily be forgotten, but it's also one that is very fascinating and one that everyone should remember. That miracles do exist. So, on the 30th of May 1998, Nollywood actor Jerry Amelio went to visit his brother in Ibadan. It was said he went there for a business meeting. Afterwards, he and his best friend named Dilo, who was also his lawyer, decided to make for Lagos. They planned that after the business meeting from Ibadan, they would go to Lagos to attend an award show where Jerry Amelio had been nominated for Best Actor in an Action Movie. It was back in 1998, so the internet wasn't a big deal there. So put that in mind. So Jerry Amelio and Dilo began their journey from Ibadan to Lagos. It is possible they started this journey pretty much late, around 6 p.m. However, somewhere around 7 p.m, while they were driving on a high speed in the highway, Jerry noticed something strange ahead of him. The road was clear, and just when they were driving, Jerry saw a tire speeding in front of them. Just one tire. It did not occur to him at first. It was like, wait, is that a tire in front of us? Immediately, he got the attention of his friend Dilo, pointing at the tire saying, what is that? Is that a tire? It was at this moment, in a split second, that they realized that the front tire of their vehicle had pulled out and was already ahead of them. And when they realized that they were in serious automobile danger, it's possible that Jerry stepped on the brakes so fast, causing the car to somersault multiple times before coming to a stop. Jerry and his friend Dilo died instantly. Passerby and witnesses who saw the accident said that the car somersaulted about 16 times before it stopped, and they knew that there was no way the people inside would have survived. According to Jerry, it was a trailer that was also going to Lagos that was behind them that saw the car somersault. Eventually, the trailer got to a checkpoint ahead of them where the driver met some policemen and told them about the accident that had occurred behind. This was around 7 p.m. and it was already getting dark. The police went to the scene and saw the accident for themselves. The body of Dilo and Jerry were recovered and taken to the police station for inventory and identification so as to contact their loved ones to come claim their body. According to Jerry, their body was kept in the police station overnight. It was the next day when the new police officers came for duty that their body was transferred to a morgue. Along the highway, some hospital mortuary that is believed to mostly house people who had had accidents along the highway. Fortunately for Jerry, the mortuary that they had taken them to was poorly equipped. In fact, it was said that they had not had constant light for nearly 3 weeks. And so freezing their body for preservation was almost unlikely. And this could have been what saved him. Otherwise, he would have mostly frozen to death. Because for 3 days, he was unattended to in the mortuary. And he claimed that most of the bodies there were victims from accidents who no one had claimed. And so they weren't properly cared for or frozen. And many of them had already begun decaying and decomposing. However, on the 3rd night while he was in the morgue, that was when the mortician decided to attend to him, to wash him up and also find the easiest way to preserve him and slow down decomposition. When the mortician got to Jerry's body, he realized that Jerry's body was not decomposing. And as he attempted to investigate it, he noticed that his body jerked, almost as though there was still life in him. But the mortician was scared because it did not make sense, given that this body had been there for over 2 days. To say the mortician ran from the morgue, raising alarm, and this made everyone around the vicinity of the hospital and the mortuary run, thinking that a ghost had emerged. Although the hospital was a little bit far from the morgue, when the doctors heard of a ghost in the morgue, they quickly ran towards it to see for themselves. Where is the ghost? Who was the ghost? And these were student doctors, not even major doctors. They were so curious to see which dead body had come back to life, which dead body was posing as a zombie. And when they got there, they noticed Jerry Amilio's body was what was on the board. And upon further observation, they realized that he was still alive. He was quickly taken away from the morgue into the hospital for an intensive care, which was successful because 3 days later, he gained full consciousness and was back to life. Although the scars from his injuries as a result of the accident were still visible, his life was untouched. Many people believe Jerry may have died and was given a second chance at life. The actor has told the story multiple times and has confirmed it to be true. However, unlike most people who claim to have died and woken up, he never really said what he saw the whole 3 days he was there. According to him, the moment he realized his front tire had pulled, everything went blank until the day he got his consciousness back. So he did not go to a green place or saw a white man or saw an angel or saw a masquerade. He did not claim to see any of these things. He just saw darkness and then saw light 3 days later. Since this was 1998, not many people were aware of what was going on because the internet was not there to spread the news or film it happen. Usually would have taken 2 or 3 days for his family to be contacted about his accident. Even his colleagues at the awards show did not know what had happened. Luckily for him, Jerry Amilio did win Best Actor in an Action Movie that year. In the award show, he was unable to attend due to his accident. So guys, that is all for this list. Let me know your thoughts. Do you know of any story of anyone who may have died and resurrected that we did not talk about? Let us know in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can also turn on notification button so whenever there is a new video, you'll be the first to get notified. Thank you for watching.